damn, this build hits goddamn hard. How goddamn hard, you may ask? Well, other than causing earthquakes, watch this. Yeah, that's a 380 million hit. Not only that, it's without a potion and wrath of the Berserker, which would grant us more than double the damage. And it's even without Uber Uniques, so we can confidently say that this build is Paragaming approved. Other than that, it's fast as heck and fast as fuck, boy. So how does this build work? And why is it so goddamn busted? Well, shit, son. It uses Hammer of the Ancients, of course. Not only that, I've spent the last week min-maxing the Paragon Board and skill tree to grant us as much damage as possible and unlimited fury. The unlimited fury lets us use 3 shouts, which halves the cooldown of Wrath of the Berserker and grants us unlimited charges. When it comes to damage, we have 4 sources of overpower, and we also overpower the more fury we spend. Some builds use Whirlwind to spend fury and proc overpower, but that's boring as shit, and no need for this build. It one-shots everything the game currently has to offer without any problems or preparation, even Uber Lilith. If this sounds interesting, then this build is definitely for you. Now you're probably eager to see my gear and aspects, so let's take a look. As you know by now, we need to stack a shit ton of overpower, which will be one of the main stats. The other best, in slot damage stats, are Max Fury and Crit Chance, as we get huge multiplicative bonuses from these stats. When it comes to defense, we need to cap out armor around 13,000. We also stack a lot of max life, which also increases our healing. Resistances should always be capped out as well, and damage reduction is not to be neglected. When it comes to the helmet, you obviously want a Shako, but unless you're a streamer or gold buyer, then Tusk Helm of Yoritz is the way to go. This helmet has all the best in slot damage for this build, and the aggressive resistance passive grants us a ton of damage reduction. On top of that, its aspect is absolutely bonkers, granting a permanent damage, fury regen, and cooldown reduction boost. So kill the fat guy and get it, my goddamn homie. On the chest, you want to max out your damage reduction and get max life. This chest is pretty solid, but damage reduction from bleeding instead of distant enemies would be optimal. And the aspect that you want is Juggernaut aspect. A permanent 6,000 armor? Yeah, that's pretty goddamn busted. On the gloves, you want to have these exact stats: strength, attack speed, crit chance, and ranks to the big bonker. For those big numbers, the Limitless Rage aspect is really strong as long as we keep our fury as high as possible. For pants, we get T-Bolt's Will. Mine are decent, but the priority is damage increase, followed by max resource and damage reduction from close. If the max resource was maxed out here, it would grant my hammer another 11% multiplicative damage. Can't catch them all, I guess. On your boots, you want these exact stats or swap between different resistance stats. There are only 2 things that I want to change here. You probably see what. Yeah, you're goddamn right. I want to change the passive to either max evade charges or movement speed, and I want the Ghost Walker aspect, as we will be permanently unstoppable with this build. Now, on the big Zug-Zug bonker and rest of your weapons, you want to max out strength, overpower, and damage while berserking. To optimize the Paragon Board, you also want all stats on at least 2 of your weapons. If you can't find this, then core skill damage and close damage is the next best stats. Now for the two-handers, I'm using the Edgemaster's aspect and the Earth Striker aspect, as they grant us the most consistent damage output. As we have a ton of crit chance using this build, a two-handed sword will be the best weapon to have as slasher weapon. We therefore also want our weapon expertise to be a two-handed axe. For the one-handers, I'm using aspect of Ancestral Force to grant us bigger hammers and aspect of elements for more damage. You also want the one-handers to be maces, as overpower grants the highest stats. Heading over to the jewelry, you want the Banished Lord's Talisman to be your amulet. Not only does this amulet have the perfect stats, it also grants us more overpowers along with increased critical strike damage with them. This is the main reason we want to stack as much crit chance as possible. For the rings, start off by getting the Ring of Red Fura. This ring also has perfect stats, but the aspect is the most yummy. It grants us free crits consistently. One hammer costs about 70 fury, so every third hammer will be a confirmed crit using this ring. For the other ring, I'm using this piece of shit because I can't find any better. Max Life and Max Fury are best in slot, but you definitely want to swap the vulnerability for crit chance. The overpower is fine, but should ideally be swapped for damage while berserking. The aspect that you want here is Bold Chieftain's aspect to reduce your shout cooldowns. Well, that was all the gear. As you know by now, maximum fury is important as heck. There is also an elixir that greatly enhances this stat, and it's Elixir of Resourcefulness. It grants your hammer 50% extra damage, so if you want to see big numbers, then make sure to stack up on this elixir. Now let's take a look at our little Cuck robot to see what he can bring us. We are mainly using Cuck to grant support and not damage. For damage ability, I'm using Tempest, as this seems to be pretty consistent. For more resources, the Resource Support Stone is really strong and mandatory to get. Efficiency Support gives us 15% crit chance, which you know how important that is. To keep vulnerability up on all targets, I'm also using Breaking Support. This is mainly used if I can't one-shot Butcher or Malphas, but you can also use Initiative Support or Gripping Support here. For the other Governing Stones, there is but one, Flash of Adrenaline. By combining it with the other stones, you get a permanent 20% damage. The tuning stones you want here are Tactical Support and Duration Support for more uptime and Safeguard Support for 15% damage reduction. Damn guys, now you're almost a Giga-Chad Barbarian like myself. Before you can truly learn how to smash that hammer, however, you need to go those biceps and complete the Ziz Skill Tree Academy. For basic skills, you can get whatever you want, as it doesn't hecking matter El Mao. Then go to the core skills and max out your hammer, along with Enhanced and Furious Hammer for that sick damage bonus. After that, you go to the defensive skills and grab Imposing Presence. I'm using 2 points here, but if you have problems with your defensives, then you can max it out and also grab Martial Vigor. I'm only here for the big damage, however, so I won't do it. Then grab Rallying Cry along with Enhanced and Strategic Rallying Cry, as this will be our main source of Fortify. To get bleeding on enemies, grab Outburst and Tough as Nails. This is so that we can get damage reduction from bleeding enemies and also benefit from a Paragon node that we will see later. After that, we grab Challenging Shout and Enhanced Challenging Shout for defensives. Now head on over to the Brawling skills and grab Warcry along with Enhanced and Power Warcry for those huge damage numbers. We then grab Charge as well as Enhanced and Power Charge, as this will reduce its cooldown greatly. If you're wondering why we are using Charge, it is because it grants us Unstoppable, and by being unstoppable, we can easily trigger T-Bolt's Will. For more damage reduction and fury, grab these passives. A Battle Fervor is extremely important here, as it is our main source of berserking in this build outside of the Paragon Board. Swiftness is also a good skill, as it grants us 12% movement speed. The weapon skills can suck it. Here we only want Pit Fighter for damage and damage reduction, and we also get Thick Skin for Fortify whenever we don't have Rallying Cry up. In the ultimate skills, we want all of these nodes simply for more damage. We then grab Wrath of the Berserker for, yeah, you guessed correctly, more damage. And lastly, these passives are necessary mainly for the healing, but it also gives us Fury regeneration whenever we swap between Charge and Hammer. And lastly, the key passive. Unbridled Rage is by far the best here for a whooping 135 damage bonus. It also increases our Fury spent, which is great, as that gives us more overpower procs. Nice job so far, friends. Let's take a look at the Paragon board now. Be aware, though, this is a thing of beauty and may cause sticky situations if not handled with caution. In the starting board, we use Exploit to get that nice vulnerability. We then head on over to the Bonebreaker board for more overpower. Here we are also using the Martial Glyph, which is how we are resetting both our Charge and Wrath of the Berserker, which is simply done by spamming shouts. We also have some really nice magic nodes that we can boost in this board, granting us a lot of overpower and damage reduction. After that, we go to the Carnage board, and we grab the Crusher Glyph for the 30% multiplicative overpower bonus whenever wielding a mace, which we always are when we hammer. Next, head on over to the Decimator board. Here we only want the legendary node, as this grants us 20% multiplicative damage. Yeah, I know, my friend, that's pretty damn nice. Next, go over to the Bonebreaker board again and make your way to the Warbringer board. Now here's a little caveat. This board has a ton of insane nodes that grant us more maximum fury. It does, however, require a lot of willpower, so if you don't have all stats on your weapons, then I suggest you to put this board earlier. The glyph that we use is Dominate. We get an overpower every 30 seconds, but also a ton of overpower damage using this glyph. And lastly, we go to the Blood Rage board. This node is the reason we want to stack damage while berserking whenever possible, as it grants us multiplicative damage. Not only that, however, it is also one of the reasons we want to apply bleeding. By killing bleeding enemies, we can easily extend our berserking. For more damage while berserking and damage reduction, we socket the Ire Glyph and grab as many strength nodes as possible. Now there's but one thing left in this guide: to learn how to play the game. To maximize your damage, you always want to keep your fury as high as possible when you use your hammer. This is done by using Rallying Cry as often as possible, as well as Charge. When at max fury, start smashing. To reset your charge cooldowns, you use Challenging Shout and War Cry. Whenever possible, you want to use these on large packs of enemies and elites. Always make sure that there are several enemies in range, as this will decrease their cooldown more. Wrath of the Berserker can be used whenever you feel like it. This build does so much damage that you barely even need it. So I just use it for the LOLs, and in the last room of vaults, where there are a shit ton of elites. Alright, that's all for this guide. If you have any questions, make sure to drop them in the comments, and I'll respond as fast as possible. See you in the next one.